Welcome here, especially those that are new to my channel. I understand that most people are since my channel is still fairly new. Really appreciate you tuning in, and I'm gonna go over just 5 really simple tips to building a garden. You don't have to have anything crazy, and I just want to review the ways that you can have a garden even if you don't have the fanciest of equipment. If you've been following along on Instagram, I do actually post more consistent updates there. I understand that being in Texas, I'm actually in sort of a subtropic area, so I actually have the advantage of being able to plant throughout the year. So if you are not at the planting in the ground or container stage yet, think of this as just a way to prep yourself for when it is time. Let me know down in the comments if you're actually ready to plant where you're from, or if you have to wait a few more months. Tip number 1 is to use the containers that you already have on hand. I already had to purchase 1 kiddie pool for my dogs because in the summer I like to fill it with water, and they run here. We have about an acre of land that we rent at this moment. And since I was already buying 1, they were $8 a piece, and I just stacked up 4 of them and decided I was gonna fill those with dirt. Not only that, but I'm gonna show you what I use as a storage shed real quick. So, if you're wondering yourself, Gwen, why are you sitting on a giant toolbox? That's a fair question. That's because this is actually my garden shed. Our landlord had an extra one when he got a new truck. And so I just put my gardening tools in here. It's not a fancy shed I got from Home Depot, but it was free and it does the job, and it doesn't take up much space because I don't have a lot of space to give. So this brings me to tip number 2, and that is you don't have to buy the fancy soil. Because the honest truth is that I have never gotten good results from even the most expensive of soils. I always have to add my compost, blood and bone, even just Miracle-Gro to get good results. Also, we're buying dirt that you're not certain what all is in it. You don't know how much fertilizer they've put in it. You don't know how much water retention stuff, mystery stuff, I don't even understand how that stuff works, they've put in there. You don't know what's in it. So in my opinion, it is best to start with a cheap soil no matter what your budget is. Because then you can add your own compost or compost that you purchased, or just start fertilizing it week by week. So if these tips are something different, or you're just liking this style and you want to see more garden content, please don't forget to give me a like and subscribe. It really helps out my channel. Another thing I want to mention that brings me to tip number 3 is just because you're growing your own food doesn't mean that you have to go as organic as possible. It's got a lot of benefits, and I highly recommend you do your own research, but it's not a prerequisite. And I see so many people that want to garden and they think they need these big, tall, $200 above ground, fancy, full-on horticulture beds. And I wish I had those. Ideally, at some point on this channel, I will be going through myself making those. I've got a heap of wood behind you that I don't have anything to put it in that I would love to use. But you don't need all of that fancy stuff. I use some of that, but I also use Miracle-Gro, and I still have a very lively garden. So use the fertilizer that you can get your hands on and that you can afford. And a lot of the organic fertilizers aren't as self-explanatory. Sure, this might burn your plants. It might. So can organic fertilizers, and this comes with instructions, right? This or another brand, it doesn't have to be Miracle-Gro. This is just the one that I keep on hand because tomatoes always seem to need more and more and more fertilizer. And with how little amount of dirt that I have, this is my best choice. So just keep in mind when you're doing anything in a garden that sometimes a box, some dirt, and a box of fertilizer is all you need to start growing your own stuff. Oh, hello. So, these are the best of what I had for my indoor seedlings. Some of the others, the big ones, are some of those zucchini I showed you already. And I just didn't have luck without a grow light. Tip number 4 for me, if you don't have a grow light and a heat lamp and all of the other big setup stuff, the one thing I will say you shouldn't do is do seedlings indoors, especially if you live in a warmer climate like I do. With this being the subtropics, there's really no reason to start them super early unless you anticipate that it's gonna be a really long extra freeze or a late freeze. So I did enjoy that I had some backups available, because here yesterday it was in the 30s, and now it was almost 80 degrees today, hence why I've got such a lovely flush. This brings me to tip number 5, and that is to use nature as your mulch. I definitely recommend mulching. It makes a little house for all of your little critters, like your roly-polies, your earthworms, your good fungi, your good bacteria, all that stuff really likes that. And then as it breaks down, it's sort of self-composting. But buying mulch, especially if it's dyed, can be really bad for your garden. And if you buy some of the more natural ones, it can be very expensive. I just pull mulch from my tree line, and if it's a little damp, if it's got some stuff growing in it, no big sticks or huge leaves, but as you can see, I just have stuff here, and I tried to snag it before the undergrowth grew out of control, so earlier in the season. And what I'll probably do next year when I get my bigger beds is I will lay the mulch down first before I put any plants in. So the mosquitoes are starting to come for me a bit, but I really appreciate you sticking around and making it until the end. I did promise you a bonus tip, and my bonus tip is to be patient. You come on here on YouTube and you see people with these big luxurious gardens, and I grew up around that. My grandfather had a terraced garden, and it had every vegetable you could practically think of. Elderberries, blueberries. My mom even had a garden, and we had corn and we had string beans, and just meet your garden where it's at. If you're growing in a container like this, a small container, understand that you're not going to necessarily have as big and as fluffy of a plant. So hey you, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I hope these tips have helped demystify gardening a little bit for you so that you can get a start and at least maybe jump into researching how to grow a garden, and you realize it doesn't have to be that hard. It should be something that you go out to every day, every couple of days, and check on, and it just gives you a minute to go out into nature, as you can hear chirping around me. And it's just an opportunity to do something with your hands and provide for your family, or even just have a snack if that's what you get out of it. And I hope that leaves you on a positive note today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.